The headline is over a split photo of both Biden and Trump, and the headline is this: "Turnout soars along with suspense as nation in tumult delivers verdict." The Times, by necessity, silent as to what the verdict is, because they've got to print this now in order to be on newsstands tomorrow morning. It's unlikely that there'll be a verdict known by the time people are reading that print edition of that paper tomorrow as well.
We saw a view of the crowd. To your point earlier, it appears no mask, no problem.
Wow.
We heard earlier tonight that all the invited guests were going to an off-site facility to get tested prior to arriving at the White House. Fox News images have now been replaced with the slide of the Trump-Pence campaign logo. There is some activity at the doorway.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Please sit. Thank you. This is without question the latest news conference I've ever had. Thank you. I appreciate it very much, and I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight, and a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people, and we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it. I want to thank the First Lady, my entire family, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, for being with us all through this. And we were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. The results tonight have been phenomenal, and we are getting ready. I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good. Such a vote, such a success. The citizens of this country have come out in record numbers. This is a record. There's never been anything like it. To support our incredible movement. We won states that we weren't expected to win. Florida, we didn't win it. We won it by a lot. And we won the great state of Ohio. We won Texas. We won Texas. We won Texas by 700,000 votes, and they don't even include it in the tabulations. It's also clear that we have won Georgia. We're up by 2.5% or 117,000 votes with only 7% left. They're never going to catch us. They can't catch us. Likewise, we've clearly won North Carolina. Where we're up 1.4% or 77,000 votes with only approximately 5% left. They can't catch us. We also, if you look and you see, Arizona, we have a lot of life in that. And somebody declared that it was a victory for, and maybe it will be. I mean, that's possible. But certainly there were a lot of votes out there that we could get, because we're now just coming into what they call Trump territory. I don't know what you call it, but these were friendly Trump voters, and that could be overturned. The gentleman that called it, I watched tonight, he said, well, we think it's fairly unlikely that he could catch. Well, fairly unlikely. And we don't even need it. We don't need that. That was just a state that if we would have gotten it, it would have been nice, Arizona. But there's a possibility, maybe even a good possibility. In fact, since I saw that originally, it's been changed and the numbers have substantially come down just in a small amount of votes. So we want that obviously to stay in play. But most importantly, we're winning Pennsylvania by a tremendous amount. We're up 600, think of this. We're up 690,000 votes in Pennsylvania, 690,000. These aren't even close. It's not like, oh, it's close. With 64% of the vote in, it's going to be almost impossible to catch. And we're coming into good Pennsylvania areas where they happen to like your president. I mean, so we'll probably expand that. We're winning Michigan by, I'll tell you, I looked at the numbers. I said, whoa. I said, wow, that's a lot. By almost 300,000 votes, and 65% of the vote is in. And we're winning Wisconsin, so we're winning. We don't need all of them. We need, because when you add Texas in, which wasn't added, I spoke with the really wonderful governor of Texas just a little while ago, and Greg Abbott, he said, congratulations. He called me to congratulate me on winning Texas. I mean, we won Texas. I don't think they finished quite the tabulation, but there's no way. And it was almost complete, but he congratulated me. Then he said, by the way, what's going on? I've never seen anything like this. Can I tell you what? Nobody has. So we won by 107,000 votes with 81% of the vote. That's Michigan. So when you take those three states in particular, and you take all of the others, I mean, we have so many, we had such a big night. You just take a look at all of these states that we've won tonight, and then you take a look at the kind of margins that we've won them by. And all of a sudden, it's not like we're up 12 votes and we have 60% left. We won states, and all of a sudden, I said, what happened to the election? It's off. And we have all these announcers saying, what happened? And then they said, oh, because you know what happened? They knew they couldn't win. So they said, let's go to court. And did I predict this, Newt? Did I say this? I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots. I said exactly, because either they were going to win, or if they didn't win, they'll take us to court. So Florida was a tremendous victory, 377,000. Texas, as we said. Ohio, think of this. Ohio, a tremendous state, a big state. I love Ohio. We won by 8.1%, 460. Think of it. Almost 500,000 votes. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you.
We are reluctant to step in, but duty-bound to point out when he says we did win this election, we've already won, that is not based in the facts at all. Again, there are millions of votes yet to be counted. Our presidents don't select our victors. Steve Kornacki's at the board. Steve, we heard a lot there. We always allow a lot on election night, hyperbole, but when it veers into falsehood, we have not called the states he claimed for victories. We've not called Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. I wonder if you could fill in some of the blanks on the truth.
Yeah, well, let's take a look here at Pennsylvania. And again, you're seeing the tally of the votes so far that have been tabulated in Pennsylvania is 56 to 43%. I think the first and most important thing to say about these numbers, though, is that there are counties. There are a number of counties in Pennsylvania that announced before tonight that they were not even going to open the mail-in ballots that they received until tomorrow. So there are some places in Pennsylvania that haven't counted a single mail-in ballot. There are plenty of counties like that in Pennsylvania. There are many other counties in Pennsylvania that have only counted a small fraction of their mail-in ballots. Now, why this late on election night are we saying they haven't counted many or any of their mail-in ballots? It's because they weren't allowed by state law in Pennsylvania to open the mail-in ballots until this morning. So there's been a long, some counties have been able to churn through some of the mail-in ballots, but you've got hundreds of thousands of these in some counties. They're just beginning to get to them. So, for example, if you take a look in the largest city in Pennsylvania, if you take a look in Philadelphia, we're expecting when all is said and done, over 800,000 votes are going to come out of Philadelphia. What has been accounted for so far? Do you see this bar right here, this yellow bar? Those are the votes that were cast by people who went out and voted in person today in Philadelphia. Those votes are tabulated. You're looking at them right there. Biden won them pretty overwhelmingly. You see this little sliver down here? That's the beginning of the mail-in ballot in Philadelphia. Do you see this giant gray space up here? That's the rest of the mail. They've got to get from the 400,000 or so votes that have been counted right now, all the way up to the 820,000 or so that were actually cast. And again, because they weren't able to even begin the processing of these until today, they are saying it's going to take them some time to get to all of that. That could take into tomorrow to do. But you are seeing Joe Biden overwhelmingly winning here in Philadelphia, leading the vote here, I should say, in Philadelphia, with hundreds of thousands of votes to come there. That can change. And it's not just Philadelphia. I'm showing you Philadelphia. Let's go out here to the suburbs of Philadelphia, densely populated Montgomery County. And again, you're going to see the same dynamic here. They have counted some of their mail. They have counted the votes that were cast today in person. And guess what? We're not at the top of the vote thermometer. That's because there's over 100,000 votes remaining to be counted in a giant county that Joe Biden right now is leading the tabulations in with 60%. This is true in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh right now, this is a pretty dramatic example. Second largest city in the state. They have counted the same day vote. That's why Donald Trump looks like he's doing better than a Republican normally does in Pittsburgh, in Allegheny County right now, because the same day vote, which is more favorable to Trump, has been tabulated. What has not been tabulated is the bulk of the mail vote. They are expecting more than 750,000 ballots when all is said and done to be tabulated here. They have got about 240,000 left to come. We are seeing this throughout Pennsylvania. I'm giving you the big ones here. As I said, there are small and medium-sized counties that aren't even going to have a little bit of the mail done tonight. They've said we're not even going to touch it until tomorrow. So the big picture in Pennsylvania, we think there are upward of 2 million ballots that have not yet been counted. and that are not a part of this tally. Donald Trump's lead right now in what has been tabulated is sitting at a little bit less than 700,000. Again, nearly 2 million to come, and they are disproportionately Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Democratic areas, and we have been seeing this split where the votes that were cast by mail, it's just for whatever reason this year, Democratic voters seem to have preferred to cast ballots by mail, and Republican voters, Trump voters, seem to have preferred to turn out on Election Day and vote in person on Election Day. And in these counties, you're seeing that Election Day vote all counted. So all the Republican votes and all the Trump votes are now included in so many of these tallies. I'm going county by county. What's not included in these tallies, either partially or wholly, across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is the mail vote. I'll tell you, we've got completed counties. We have a scattering of completed counties. I've shown you them tonight. It looks like a competitive race to me right now. It doesn't look like a race anybody could call.
It looks like a competitive race in which one of the candidates is so afraid of the ultimate tallying of the votes that he has pulled this hee-haw laugh track move tonight by saying, we did win this election. He literally said, we want all the voting to stop.
Yeah.
We've already won it. I mean...
But that's not his position. Here's how you know we still can't swear, even though it's 2:35 in the morning, BS. He wants them to keep going in Arizona.
That's correct. And his campaign demanded that they keep it open later because they wanted to keep going. Exactly.
This is straight up autocratic malarkey. And I think that what we have to sort of keep in mind is that he's not the boss of the counting.
That's correct.
The bosses of the counting are the precincts or the counties and are the states that will said on your show and other places that the counting will continue.
Exactly. And people, you cannot say it enough that Donald Trump's words tonight have absolutely no legal meaning. They are entertainment for the people who are in that room without masks on who want to be entertained by him. They're entertainment for, his friends on Fox, the people who love him. They have no legal meaning. Donald Trump has no decision-making authority over the end of the election. The election ends when all the votes are counted. The votes are being counted. If it takes 5 days, 10 days, it doesn't matter. The election ain't over until the votes are all counted. It was meaningless.
That the election was over earlier in the evening,
and then all of a sudden,
and then it was canceled.
Arizona.
He kept saying over. We were getting ready for a big celebration.
Yeah.
It was all over. We were winning, and then
they counted more votes.
What happened?
Then we went down.
And
they
then what happens? They counted more ballots, which was terrible. And so now we must stop the counting of the ballots because we've decided that is a fraud. I mean, I'm glad that he told us in advance that he was going to do this. So that we would be less bowled over and more willing to laugh at it. But it is still just absolutely remarkable, A, to see a campaign event inside the White House, but B, to see the president literally try to do this, saying, we want all voting to stop. We've already won it. With even, as Steve's just saying, even in Pennsylvania alone, millions of ballots left to be counted.
And some ballots, by the way, of people who voted for him. So I mean, the reality is this is the pure autocratic move that this is the reason it is so shocking that so many people think that this man is qualified to be president of the United States. Not only is he completely incompetent, but he's a wannabe autocrat. There was a Republican, one of your fellow Never Trumpers was calling him Viktor Orban. This is Viktor Orban-esque behavior. Yeah. This wild ranting, reliving his favorite moments from tonight. Remember when I was ahead by like 2 points? That was the best. And I'm just going to relive that over and over. He sounds ridiculous. I'm just embarrassed that everyone can see it, that around the world people can see it and see that this is what we are. This is what is leading the United States. It's absolutely embarrassing.
There is a deadly serious side to this, though, and I think some of the open questions are how far does the country's Attorney General, Bill Barr, go as his lawyer? I mean, there are still levers of the government that someone who's, autocratic curious can pull in service of his political campaign, and we know Donald Trump won't hesitate to pull them. Up to this moment, Bill Barr hasn't hesitated to be pulled by him, so we'll see.
Well, and the Supreme Court, and he mentioned the Supreme Court and was very specific about that. He did telegraph
as if he can just take the election, call it over, and announce that there won't be any more voting, and that the Supreme Court will take over. That's not how it works.
It's not exactly clear that we can trust Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh and these others not to be just like Bill Barr. And so I think what scares people is that if he decides to do something that it legally makes no sense. And you're right, but Mr. Bauer is ready for him. But if somehow they manage to stumble into the Supreme Court, do any of you guys trust Uncle Clarence and Amy Coney Barrett and those guys to actually follow the letter of the law? No. I mean, it is a completely politicized Supreme Court that you can't just trust that they're going to do the right thing. Now, so far, the courts have actually been pretty good. So we'll see.
Brian.
I would only say that there's something obvious to the three of you. I'm sure if he doesn't prevail, tonight lays the predicate for the election was stolen, a very powerful and potent talking point that they can return to, a grievance over the course of 4 years. Again, if he does not prevail. Joy raises an excellent point about the Supreme Court, but we have a great, excellent in-house counsel standing by, our chief legal correspondent, Ari Melber, host of The Beat, 6 p.m. Eastern on this network. Ari, a couple of questions. Number one, I know you lawyers love the term standing. Would a case that goes direct to the Supreme Court, can that happen? Is it possible without making its way to the Supreme Court? And two, Justice Barrett, the president, there's a public record of his comments saying, of course I want her seated on the court in case this election goes to the court. Is that not old-timey grounds for recusal in your line of work?
A lot of people think that calls into question her impartiality. I think what we just heard from the president, Brian, is completely horrific for democracy. You can mark it down 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time, election night, where the President of the United States declared in the middle of an election, we want all voting to stop. I could just tell you constitutionally that's not how it works. It's wrong. Legally, and this is very important for the days ahead, legally, what the president just told the nation is worthless. As a legal matter, those remarks could have been written in invisible ink. The election and the counting and the processing of ballots is not controlled legally by the president, as Joy and others mentioned. But this could get very hot very quickly, and I'll tell you exactly why. You mentioned, how do you get something to the Supreme Court? Well, if a state or several states has a margin that relates to certain types of ballots, for example, the counting of mail ballots, those kind of cases can go up through the appeals courts and up to the Supreme Court. Indeed, as recently as last Wednesday, with regard to mail ballots in Pennsylvania, a court majority said they think that potentially ballots that are counted after today might be tossed under the Constitution. That would be a change. That would be a new ruling. But we've already seen that foreshadowed. I think the big problem here, and the reason why the president addressing the nation here at this late hour and saying that he wants the vote stop, declaring himself the winner. I mean, this is serious business. He said, we did win the election, end quote. He said that falsely, is a big problem as this all plays out. Now, if there is ultimately a margin when the votes are counted this week that is, for example, formed by several states, it would be much harder to find a way to get standing and get before the Supreme Court. But if it is two or one state, if it relates to the mail ballots, Brian, there are ways to get back before the court. And so I think everyone has to be very clear. While we keep an open mind, rule of law, I'll report out whatever the courts decide, an open mind about all of these states that are going to tell us the votes. Several states like Pennsylvania and North Carolina, they count votes for days. The votes were cast by today, but they count them for days. We'll keep an open mind about all of that. But we cannot keep an open mind or sound neutral about the falsehoods that just came out of the White House. To be honest with you, it pains me a little bit to say it, but the president was lying about the election results and speaking to address the democracy by telling the democracy he doesn't believe in democracy, stop the voting. It's a serious development tonight.
David Plouffe is joining our conversation. Ari Melber, thank you for that. David, your reaction to those words without precedent, certainly, given everything that's been uttered in the East Room over the history of our republic and that structure.
Yeah, it's one of the darkest hours the White House has ever seen, one of the darkest hours in American history. Ultimately, I don't think Trump's going to be successful. If Joe Biden gets to 270 electoral votes, all these votes were legally cast. They're not being counted in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania ahead of the election by state law. But it is a dangerous and dark moment. So even if Trump's not successful, and I don't think he will be if the votes are there for Joe Biden, you're going to have 45% of the country believing him. Which is going to affect our democracy going forward. It's going to affect President-elect Biden's ability to work with Republicans in Congress. So, we knew he was going to say it. He's been telegraphing it. He tweeted it out a couple hours ago. But to see the President of the United States in the White House basically saying, I don't care what votes have been counted or not, at some point in the night, I thought I was going to win. The election should be over. It's startling. It's dark. It's scary. Now, I still think at the end of the day, if Joe Biden, wins Arizona, wins Wisconsin, wins Michigan, he's already won the Nebraska 2nd Congressional District, he'll get to 270 and he'll be the president. But these are going to be dark and scary days over the next, few days, if not few weeks.
Credit where credit is due. It was Jonathan Swan at Axios who first reported, 48 hours ago, subsequently denied by the president, that the plan was for the president to prematurely go out, claim victory, real or imagined, before such a thing was legally awarded. David, talk about the Democrats' ability and means for going about this as a counterbalance.
Well, listen, because Trump has telegraphed this, and you can never rule anything out with him. The Biden campaign, the Democratic lawyers community, led by, Bob Bauer and Mark Elias, have been ready for this. So I think they'll be ready on the legal grounds. Again, when you look at what Trump is claiming, one, he wants the voting to continue in Arizona. He wants the voting to continue in Nevada. He wants to stop it in the states where he's ahead. And again, those states are not counting ballots. Many of these ballots were sent in 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. They've just been sitting there because by law, you cannot start counting those ballots until today, and some of the counties have decided to do it tomorrow. So I think the Democrats will be ready. It's always good when your opponent telegraphs their plays ahead of time. But that doesn't mean, listen, we knew Trump was going to say it, Brian. That was super painful to watch as an American citizen. Again, I do think it's one of the darkest moments in American history, one of the darkest moments that building has seen. And, the sooner we get votes counted, so if Joe Biden can be declared the winner in Arizona, if it can be declared the winner in Wisconsin or Michigan, the better. But I agree with Ari. If this comes down to one state, obviously Trump does not want to go meekly into the night, no matter what damage he does to our democracy and our country.
David Plouffe, I agree with you. I think there's like an extra layer of pain. If you've worked in the White House, I worked for a president who didn't let us wear jeans into the building because of its sacred nature. You just had someone try to literally hijack and desecrate our democracy from the East Room. Just in the vein of how bad is it, I want to read you two pieces of feedback. Chris Christie over on ABC News, a staunch Trump ally and advisor, said that this speech tonight was bad strategic decision and a bad political decision. Ben Ginsburg, a long time, sort of the Republican counterpart to Mr. Bauer on the Democratic side, Ben Ginsburg said over on CNN that there is no direct right of appeal to the Supreme Court to stop counting ballots. He says they can challenge individual states over procedures. Ben Ginsburg says courts would believe Trump's lawsuit would be a, quote, massive disenfranchisement that would be frowned upon. So just, you've got there some hot takes from staunch conservatives about the political stupidity and the legal weakness of the case. The question isn't, does that slow Trump down, but does that render fruitless the shenanigans? Does that really sort of reinforce the Biden message of stay calm and carry on?
Well, Nicole, again, when you look at the legal regimes in these states around elections, they're following the law. So I'm not a lawyer. I occasionally have played one on TV. I just don't see the legal pathway here. But I do think it would undermine Trump's megaphone if you had, Chris Christie, great. Let's see Mitch McConnell. Let's see other Republican senators. I think how Fox handles this, I think they've handled election night responsibly. Do they continue to handle it responsibly is going to be really, really important. And my sense is, at least for the next 72 hours, people are going to say, even some Trump allies, we ought to let the votes be counted. But so maybe he's more of a paper tiger. It doesn't mean that it's any less alarming. to see a sitting American president basically saying, I'm going to stay in the White House. I don't really care what the voters had to say. I'm going to stay here. And we've never seen anything like this in the history of our republic.
David Plouffe, thank you very much. I want to bring into the conversation now Lawrence O'Donnell, who has been watching this alongside us. Lawrence, the president did telegraph that he was going to do this tonight, and I think there was a little bit of debate as to whether or not the backlash to the reporting that he intended to do this was going to be enough to stop him from doing it, but he barreled right through it tonight.
Well, I think what you can gather from a couple of things, from Chris Christie's comments saying that it was an ill-advised thing to do, not a smart speech to do, and the fact that there were teleprompters there that the president did not use. Something was written and placed in those teleprompters that is different from what the president decided to say after the very long delay before the president went out there and started to speak. When he started to speak, we had every reason to question exactly what his drug regime is, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning in the post-coronavirus state that he is in at the moment, because the incoherence was at a new level for Donald Trump. He said, for example, we have won Texas and they don't even include it in the tabulations. And he said that more than once. And that sentence doesn't make any sense no matter how you read it. He also went on as if lost, as if in a room, as if it was completely lost, saying things like, what happened to the election? It's off. That's a direct quote. That's word for word. That's what the man said. He then said, this is very important sequencing. He then said, they'll take us to court. Then he said, everything just stopped. Then said, we want all voting to stop. All voting has stopped. We all agree on that. All the voting has stopped. He did not say we want all counting to stop, but it sounded like that's what he was trying to say. And then he said, we'll be going to the Supreme Court, which is legally impossible. There's no such thing as a first stop at the Supreme Court. What he is clearly going to do, he said, most importantly, he's winning in Pennsylvania. That's where he's going to go. And we know the lawsuit they're going to bring in Pennsylvania. It might be the only one they bring. They've brought it before. They're saying you are not allowed to accept mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania for those 3 extra days that have been set up this year without the legislature's approval. Pennsylvania intends to accept ballots that arrive 3 days after Election Day. That's what they will legally fight. That's the only thing they will legally fight. They will never bring a lawsuit anywhere in any state saying stop the counting of ballots that arrived on time. This is a mostly meaningless event tonight that is as dark as everyone has said it is. It is as disgraceful as everyone has said it is. But like so much of Trump, it is mostly meaningless.
Lawrence, I want to let you know that while we have all been talking and absorbing this, the Republican governor of Arizona has weighed in on this as well, Doug Ducey. You will recall that by NBC's count right now, Arizona is too early to call, but Joe Biden is in the lead there. That, of course, would be a pickup for the Democrats since Trump won Arizona in 2016. Doug Ducey says this, quote, it is far too early to call the election in Arizona. Election day votes are not fully reported, and we haven't even started to count early ballots dropped off at the polls. In Arizona, we protected Election Day. Let's count the votes, all the votes, before making declarations. A lot of passive voice there doing a lot of work in him not directly having to confront the president of his own party.
What Donald Trump said tonight doesn't actually disagree with that. I mean, we all know what we think we heard. We all think we heard him say that he wants counting stopped, but he didn't actually say that. He said he wants voting stopped, which has already stopped. And so there's no lawyer in the building who's going to try to bring a lawsuit to any state that says stop counting your ballots, except in Pennsylvania, where they're going to be saying stop accepting ballots, accepting the ballots that arrive after the deadline that the legislature had in place, which was then replaced by this 3-day extension that is going to be the subject of a lawsuit. And that's it. There's probably no other lawsuit on this electoral map that Donald Trump can bring.
And to that point, hearing Bob Bauer, the legal director for the Biden campaign, address that potential lawsuit in Pennsylvania last night and express absolutely no concerns whatsoever about the Biden campaign's prospects in that kind of a lawsuit, tells you how desperate this is. I would just say, just got a couple minutes here, but I think the one thing that's underappreciated about what the president is doing here is that the president would not have to do that if he thought he was going to win the election. The only reason you come out and say, I'm winning Georgia, I won North Carolina, I won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all these places, is because you haven't. And you have to assert it because it's not otherwise true.
Well, and it got out. So the front page of today's New York Times said Donald Trump, with no path to victory, plans to turn to legal machinations. Yeah. The only thing I quibble with is it is incoherent to people, you know, sort of devoted to nouns and verbs. But I think Trump's base heard him loud and clear.
Sure.
And I think that whatever happens in the next 24 to 48 hours, hopefully the votes will be counted. The Biden campaign still feels really good about those 3 states. Trump's base also heard him loud and clear through the incoherence tonight that if Biden wins, it will be a fraud.
We're going to be taking a quick break in just a moment. What's your closing thoughts?
Yeah, it'll be a problem for, if Biden wins, having to then govern people who believe that it was this great fraud and that it was robbed from Donald Trump, meaning we'll probably still hear from Donald Trump. But I will just go back to saying, once again, latest text again, the campaign is confident. And the confidence of the Biden side and the sort of steadiness and stability of what they've been saying all night to you, what I've been hearing, what they've been saying to me, the steadiness versus the frantic mess that we just saw in the East Room tells you which side understands where the race really is.
Brian?
I want to see the event the Wall Street Journal covered. Here's their headline on social media. President Trump told supporters he was confident he would win the election, projecting confidence in his chances of winning Pennsylvania. So that would have been something to watch. A break for us. Our live coverage continues as we crest the top of the hour.